world is changing.
My name is Daryl Sawchuk. I'm a visual effects supervisor here at Method Studios. On Black Panther, I was one of the animation supervisors on the film. One of my primary responsibilities was working with a dedicated team of animators to craft digital performances for the hero actors for Black Panther and for Kilmonger, along with helping to choreograph a lot of the third act battle, primarily consisting of fight vignettes, stunt performances. The scope of work originally was, a lot of helmet replacements. Black Panther and Kilmonger were meant to be primarily practical suits with some digital top-ups. But what we found early on shooting was that the suit started to break down a little bit, and there was going to be quite a lot of repair work that was going to be needed. We spent quite a few months actually redesigning the suit with the creative team at Marvel to add more high-tech design and functionality to the suit itself, which, that meant that the scope of work was drastically changing for us.
Show off.
We ended up doing full-on CG replacements for the two main actors. There's a scene in the film where Black Panther re-emerges from the wreckage of the Dragon Flyer in the middle of the battle, and this is a pivotal scene because the audience comes to realize that Black Panther in fact has not died. What we did on the day was we shot Chadwick rising up onto a couple of foam blocks. This allowed us to kind of get the camera framing and everything sorted out with the filmmakers. And then we went in and added in a bunch of the digital components that made up the scene, everything from the background sky, CG grass and distant mountains, all of the actual plane wreckage, the smoke and the fire, and then of course the CG Black Panther suit was all done digitally. We used the performance of Chadwick in order to get the timing and the mannerisms of Black Panther. But because the helmet was on the whole time, in the end this was completely computer generated. This one was a combination where we wanted to use the live action performance and obviously the facial performance from the actor. So a lot of the same approaches would transpire. We'd go through and create the roto animation of the character. We'd add in the CG background, the sky. And then there was a lot of fine-tuning that we had to do, for example, to get the neck deformation to be accurate, to make sure that the blending of the live-action actor and the CG lined up. So there's a clip in the movie where Killmonger's clothing is burning off his body, and one of the first things that we needed to do was digitally line up our CG version of Killmonger underneath the actor's performance, which you can see in that red wireframe form. And what that allows us to do is when we start doing the effect sim of the clothing breaking off, it can actually collide with the CG character underneath. So that allows it just to kind of interact with and ground itself in the physical space. So the design of the suits for Black Panther and Kilmonger definitely evolved quite a lot on the film. So a big part of what we needed to pull off was that energy force and layer. The feeling of vibranium technology was something that was omnipresent across the whole of the film, and we needed to find a way in order to capture that visually. We ultimately wanted everything to kind of emerge from or retract into the necklace of Black Panther and Kilmonger. We did a bunch of systems to make these nanite particles kind of spawn from and kind of almost like clapperboards kind of unfurl across the character's body as they form the suit. They really wanted to play the idea that whenever one of the actors took a hit, any kind of concussive force, that it was actually storing energy in the suit.
Hey, wait a minute.
The nanites absorb the kinetic energy and hold it in place for redistribution.
Very nice.
So we needed to show both, how that suit and how that energy was kind of powering up the suit and actually kind of emerging, and then actually how that was expanding outwards. The way in which we start building these characters is to go and shoot a lot of reference of the main actors and their stunt performers out on set. So that involves a lot of photography of them, both with and without their suits on. So we could see how their muscles were deforming and how their body would move. And then knowing that we had to do a lot of fight choreography, we actually had them do a bunch of punches and kicks and various combinations of movements that we had seen in both the previs and some of the early photography. A digital double is a computer-generated version of an actor or a performer or a stunt double. It's meant to augment stunt performances that were done on set or to do suit replacements as we need to in certain superhero films. What you can see here is the stunt performance that we had for Black Panther. The actor was a fantastic martial artist and was able to do some of the movements that would have taken a bunch of animators in a room quite a lot of time to be able to pull off the physicality and the realism on that performance. And what you can see is an example of the environment that we had on the day. There's some blue screen coverage in the back that would allow us to isolate the background extra extras that we had fighting it in the background, the CG environment and the layers that we put into the Wakandan landscape. From there, we went through and added in dozens of background digidoubles in order to make the fight scene feel much more expansive. One of the biggest challenges that we had on our plate was making sure that everything we were doing was going to be able to cut back and forth with the live action photography that was shot. In a lot of cases with these movies, you want to keep as much of the live action photography as possible. You don't want to replace everything just because you can. So there's a scene in the movie where we're in tight with Black Panther as he's being pummeled by the border tribesmen, and it's a good example of the combination or the hybrid of live action photography and digital augmentation. We kept the eyes from Chadwick and then augmented that and put the digital suit on top. The reasons for keeping some of the live action, set pieces, the rocks and everything in the background, I mean, it's always a good idea to keep as much from principal photography as possible, just because we know that stuff is real, and then we augment around it, add in a bunch of effects and dust elements and everything to make sure that we sit ourselves in the scene. This is one of our biggest shots where Black Panther had to grab the spear and turn around and fire it off at the dragonflyer and then narrowly avoid being shot by the blasters on the way down. And this, ran the gamut. It had every one of the possible elements of what we had to do for the Wakandan battle on Mount Mushenga. So this had the full digital build for our environments. The first layer that we build out is our digital map painting of the sky in the distant background. And then we've got a layer of our CG environment. So this has got the full terrain that we've built out, the grass, the pearl rock in the background, the building off to the left. And then in the next pass, what you can see is we're adding in the digital character. And then from there, you can see there's a bunch of effects-heavy solutions or simulations for dust and debris that get kicked up in and around Black Panther as he runs up the hill. When the camera swings around, you can see there's a crowd of border tribesmen running down the field. The dragonflyer comes really close to camera and then digs into ground, kicking up a big dust and debris interaction pass. All of that had to be pulled together in compositing. One of the things that we did here with this shot was originally we shot it as 2 different takes. We used the first rhino that runs through frame to help us wipe the camera in order to get the second part of the camera move. So the creature work on this film was definitely a challenge to pull off, primarily because of the specific locomotion that we needed to do. A lot of times when you're trying to find, and build up the research of the actions that are required, there's only so much that you can find online. There wasn't necessarily a lot of reference of rhinos banking and running around camera or running around the corner. It can definitely be a little challenging, but what we'll do is we build up a library of basic gaits, so walks, and runs that we use a lot of reference for, that we know we kind of have the speed of locomotion worked out and feeling physically accurate. And then what we can do is kind of put that on a path to have it kind of meander through the crowd as we need to. From there, we can kind of fine-tune the performance to, either speed up or slow down the action that's required. But definitely, it can be a little bit more challenging than some of the, the straight digital double work that we had to do in the film, just because there wasn't really anything for us to match to. So there was a lot more creative interpretation of how those creatures needed to move. The most rewarding part of the job that we do here as visual effects artists working in the industry these days is helping to realize some of these childhood fantasies that you've had growing up, reading comic books, thinking about comic books, bringing these characters to life. It's amazing the tools and technology and the artistry that we have available now allows us to really create anything that we can imagine. And not only just create anything that we can imagine, but also do it photographically now. It's amazing to be a part of such a massive movie franchise, such a successful film. You take a lot of pride and pleasure in that work.